Hello and welcome, everybody. Good afternoon.
Hello, everybody.
This is Chris speaking together with Macarena. Hello, Macarena. Hello, audience.
Hello, Chris.
So the thing that we've changed for those that have seen us earlier uh, is that we are now streaming, so to speak, live across several channels. So you will be joining us today from YouTube or LinkedIn, probably, maybe even from Twitter. So hello and welcome, everybody. I'm going to type in the hello and welcome again in the chat. So the chat is also the way you can communicate with us, and we're going to be talking today, as usual, about science to data science. About PhDs and master students moving to startups and industry. So this is particularly for you if you are at the moment not yet in industry, but this is where you would like to go. Maybe you are from, hello, Valentina. So you are somewhere in academia, you're a master student, a PhD, or a postdoc. So hello, Valentina from Germany. This is for you. We're going to be talking about how to move in this and move you forward. Okay, it's a Friday afternoon, and it's also quite hot at the moment. So I hope this works for everybody as we move forward. And I would like to start while we're actually still kind of waiting for our third host to join us, where we've had a bit of a problem that I'm going to try fix while we keep going. So we're going to talk about science to data science, about PhDs and master students or postdocs moving on. And to move right in, we have 10 examples for you. Actually, Macarena, can I hand over to you the presentation of some of those examples, including yourself and Dina, perhaps, while in the background, I'm going to try and sort onboarding Dina.
Okay, I can talk about myself first, if that's okay, since I'm one of the
Super.
examples. Well, I'm a PhD in biology. I studied biology in Argentina and worked for several years in research, where I studied programming and working with high inputs of data. And at some point in my career in academia, I decided I didn't want to stay in research for several reasons that probably many of you share. One of them is that there is no really, it's not easy to have a stable position in academia. And also at some point, I didn't want to move from city to city, and I wanted more stability. So after that, I decided to do a more formal training in bioinformatics, where I decided that I was a biologist and I like biological data, but I didn't want to stick to that because in the end, what I really liked was trying to analyze data and trying to build prediction models. So I joined a data science bootcamp in Berlin. That's where I met Chris, who was the director at the time. And after 3 months in this bootcamp, immediately after that, I would say, I started working first as a data science consultant in two different companies. And since August last year, I work as a data scientist in a startup in Berlin. So at least that's my journey, how I moved from academia to data science.
Thank you, Macarena. So I've, in the meantime, resent the invitation to Dina, who I hope will join us. Apologies to those watching us. We'll get it sorted. So you have in front of you 10 examples. Macarena is one of them. Dina is actually another one of them. So we're showing you 10 examples of people that have moved from science to data science. And we're showing them to you because we would like you actually to look at the names and just see that this is really a totally international landscape in terms of names. So this is people from all over the world. Hello, Dina. We also want you to notice that these are from all kinds of disciplines. So what the message that we're trying to convey is, if you have a numerate background, no matter which discipline and which country you come from, if you have a numerate background, and then we'll come to Python, SQL, and other kinds of experience in a minute, you can make this transition to data science, data analytics, data engineering, so to startups and industry happen. So, it's wide open. That's what we would like to talk about. And this is what this slide is meant to convey. So, hello, Dina.
Hi, everyone.
So for the audience, actually, we've switched tools. We've moved from doing a Zoom conference to streaming it because it's, at the end of the day, actually a better setup to reach a more diverse audience. There's something else, dear audience, that we now need to learn. We haven't perfected yet. That is actually how to use the chat. So Macarena and Dina, can you check on your chat tab whether you can actually chat with the people? Macarena said she couldn't, but you should have a chat tab where you now could because we're live. Should work. So you can try and type in hello and welcome. We see if it goes out. Okay, I will take us through this thing. So here is no, not the private chat. Exactly. You need to go on the public chat. Can you do that?
I will check. No.
No. So if at the bottom of your box where you can type in chat, at the bottom at the left, there's a label where you can at least post things so that they go to the AI Guild YouTube. Can you see that?
No.
No. Okay, then I will have to answer all the questions in the chat while you do the talking. That's our solution for today. So we're here because we want to talk about data careers, and you've hopefully been reading the quote for the time being. So this is the point, and this is still true. The quote is from a few years ago from Jean-François Garnier, a French-Canadian entrepreneur that has also built an AI startup and that has particularly been doing talent reporting. So he's been looking at industry and he's been looking at the numbers. And here are the last time he compiled the numbers for 2020. And what you see here is simply that as far as we're aware, like 2 years ago, there were 500,000 professionals. This was a 10x from 2017, so 4 years earlier when he could only identify 50,000. So that was the growth rate in those 4 years, a 10x within 4 years to about 500,000 practitioners, of which 99% were working on solving use cases or getting use cases up and running, whereas only 1% of them were in AI and research. So it's a fast-growing field. We will show you in a minute that we think it's growing equally fast over the next years, but that's where we are. Also to point out that we have free online support. Part of what we're doing today is free online support. There's also online support available further. And by the way, those of you that registered on Eventbrite and Meetup will be sending out these slides, and I will post the link to the slides on YouTube as well. So anybody who wants to look at this can do. And we're recording it on YouTube, so you can also always re-watch, which is a large part of the point of this. Then all three of us are members of the AI Guild. So if you would like to join the community and you're a data practitioners, you can do so. And with that, we come to the actual stuff we want to do with you today. So we're going to introduce ourselves in a minute, and you can start asking questions. We can all read the questions, although I might be the only one able to respond in the chat, but we can all read the questions. So please, whatever you would like to ask about starting a career, you can do so now. Macarena has already said a little bit about where she come from. Maybe you can provide a short summary for those people that have joined us a little bit later. So you're a data scientist at the moment, and you are formerly at the Max Planck.
Yes, like I said, I'm a biologist by training. I did my PhD in biology and worked in research for several years. And at some point, I decided to leave academia for several reasons. I work so far as a data science consultant. And since August last year, I work as a data scientist in a startup. So it's been a long journey for me, but a successful one so far. And that's a little bit of a summary of what I've been doing in the last years.
Okay, thank you. Then on to our second host, Dina.
Hi, everyone. So I have been in academia as well for 11 years, doing my master's and PhD and teaching before I moved to data science back in 2017. And yeah, in the beginning, I had a short time working as a consultant with a consultancy company in London, and then I worked as a data scientist here in Berlin for a startup. And about a year ago, I joined Spiced Academy, which is a data science bootcamp that is located in Berlin.
Thank you, Dina. So what's really interesting about Dina is, you were a university student, you finished your PhD, then you actually started working in the profession, and now you have taken to teaching it again. So Dina is also really a person to ask about the experience of what it means if you learn now, because she's actually working with people that are entering the profession right now. Then myself, so I actually work for the AI Guild. I, like Macarena, previously worked at Max Planck. I worked not at a Max Planck Institute, but for the society as a whole, rolling out digital infrastructures. And before that, I also did a PhD, like all three of us. It'd be an interesting discussion to have at some point. What's the value of a PhD today, so to speak? How has it changed? Okay, moving us on, and actually showing a comment we have here. So, hi Piyush, nice to have you here. A final year PhD student in theoretical physics who would like to transition to DSML. As of now, I'm self-learning, but it's quite disorganized because there is a lot. Okay, so actually, the next slide that we have here is about the labor market, but Dina, so how would you organize? If it's so disorganized, what can you say? What would you recommend to Piyush how she goes about her self-learning at the moment?
First of all, I feel your pain. I felt the same way. And I think one tip that I would give that I felt really kind of fast tracked so I did that transition in about 9 months. So that's 9 months from thinking about it to actually landing a couple of offers and signing one. And during the beginning of those 9 months, I was really overwhelmed with the amount of resources and also the job descriptions. They asked for everything. And so I kind of felt like I don't know what exactly to focus on. So, one tip that I would give, and Chris is going to mention a lot more in the upcoming slides, is to go outside of yourself and try to attend meetups for either data analytics or data science, whatever you feel that you're more interested in. But also, if you can reach out to a community like the AI Guild, or to an experienced recruiter in the field of data, which is something that I did, and also other people who have did the transition just by searching on LinkedIn and asking what are the key ingredients, what are the most important things that I need to learn in order to land a job. I feel that when I did that, I had so much clarity and I started taking the right steps. So that's one tip. And yeah, I'm sure that we will mention many more as we go.
Thank you. Take this out again, and move us forward. So actually, somebody here is finishing their studies, a final year PhD student. Valentina was saying she was a postdoc in mathematics. Macarena, I've changed our slide a little bit here. It says now switch as soon as possible. I know that you also have an opinion on this about switching and how to do it. Perhaps you could speak to that?
Yes, definitely. Switch as soon as possible. I mean, once you have the idea to do it, start planning for that. Maybe I know for practical reasons you cannot just start immediately because you're finishing probably your PhD and you want to have the degree, which is actually fair. But once you have the idea, just move towards that and do it. Don't wait until or say something. It's better to do a postdoc. Maybe it's not better if you already have the idea. I mean, I did postdocs and everything, but back then I didn't have a clear idea that I wanted to transition into data science. But once I had it, I did it. I moved towards this idea, and what Dina just shared with us is really a very good way to start. I know that there is a lot of information out there, but try to reach out to a community. At least, for example, here in Berlin, there are a lot of meetup groups for data people, or study groups where you wouldn't be alone. Of course, there are more. There are academies or boot camps, but that's not really necessary for many of you probably. But it's important to join a community and talk to people to have an idea of where to focus on. For example, what are the skills needed to transition.
Thank you for that. We have a question here we have an issue here with the PhD that is overqualified. So hello, PhDs. Dina, back over to you. So how do you address that?
Yeah, I faced that myself. So I had this idea that because I'm new to the field, even with a PhD, I have to apply only to positions that have junior on them. I even remember applying to kind of like what do they call it? Like a student job as a data analyst or data science. I thought that that's necessary to gather experience. However, the first job I landed, they actually were asking for 2 years experience, and I managed to. And this is something that is Chris is also going to address. When you're doing your PhD and you're looking at your experiences, you need to do it in a way that you translate your strength and experiences to things that will be valuable in the role of a data analyst or a data scientist. And when you formulate your CV and your experiences like that, you're not a junior, especially with a PhD. You're not really a junior, and the positions that are advertised as junior are really looking for people who just graduated their bachelor, maybe their master's, because we're talking about Germany. So I feel your pain. However, it's a matter of also like applying to not as many positions as possible, but applying to all of the positions that you feel you have some edge from your experience as a physicist, as a mathematician. For example, in my PhD, I was working in the field of communications engineering, of networking, but I was doing a lot of programming in another completely different non-industry related language, MATLAB. I'm sure some of you know it, and a little bit of R. And even though the industry doesn't work with these, my programming still translates, and I'm not a junior in terms of programming. So, that's how I would think about it, and it's very important to formulate your pitch and also your CV, very important as such.
Thank you, Dina. Then let me take us to the next slide, so to speak, about the data roles. Because so on the one hand, we're talking now, PhD, master, I'm coming from academia. How do I find an entry-level position? How much programming experience do I need? What role am I looking for? So there are several things that I come. And actually, is my online training good enough? Will that actually also get me a job? Yeah. So what you have here in front of you is data roles. So something that I want to put out here is simply that specialization is happening. The field is being developed. It's more than 500,000 practitioners. Perhaps by now we're approaching 1 million. The truth of the matter is, because the field is growing so rapidly, of course, it's a pyramid. Yeah. So the bottom is very broad and the top is very narrow, because most people are at the beginning of their career, as is you would expect just numerically when a field is growing that fast and is young. But nevertheless, so now companies hire for data analysts or data scientists or data engineer. And actually, over the last 5 years, companies have learned what the difference is. Yeah. So they now, yeah, some not, but on the whole, we're moving in that direction. People are getting better at this. Both companies and practitioners are getting better at this. The next thing is, when I got involved also as the director of a bootcamp in 2017, lots of people coming out of academia were using MATLAB. some 2-3 years later, I noticed that less and less people were using MATLAB. So whereas 5 years ago, like 90% said MATLAB, now 90% say Python. Some say R. So this has changed, which is also why on the slide before here it now says, switch as soon as possible, i.e. you have your degree, and greater 12 months Python experience. So this has changed. Now, there are just lots of people that bring this Python experience because they were doing their master thesis or their whole PhD because they're working with data with this language. And it changes the market. So if you're listening today and you do not yet have a year's worth of Python experience, this actually, it will slow you down on the labor market, to be honest. So this is something that is important. And to my mind, this is where this online learning comes in. So a year of Python experience isn't a year of Python in industry. I mean, that's nice, but that's not the point. But it's actually of using it regularly, Python and SQL. And this is what your Udacity, DataCamp, Coursera, online generally actually can do for you to kind of ramp up that experience, get your head around and make sure that you feel confident. I mean, at the end of the day, you want to feel confident in doing this. I think this is where you are. Macarena, you were saying, so over to you and your comment.
No, I totally agree that now at least job descriptions are more specific, but sometimes I still see some companies that don't have the same definition, let's say, for data scientist or data engineer or data analyst. Like sometimes there is an overlap, and sometimes they call data analyst what I would call a data scientist or something. I mean, sometimes the name is not that clear, but I agree that what is clear are probably the job descriptions that you see nowadays. I guess companies are being more specific and understand more what to expect from data people in their teams.
Okay. So we had in the mean question about programming. So SAS and R, like MATLAB, yes, you get your head around, but the other, I think, probably truth about this is that Python and SQL are the must-haves. Dina, would you agree? Is that what you see?
I mean, there are companies that use SAS and R, but I would say that we're talking about 5% or something from the available jobs out there.
Yeah.
And I think SQL is an absolute must-have, even if the company works with R, for example. But again, these are very few.
Okay. Good. So that's sorted. Then the next, so we've been talking about the fact that you're wanting to move from A to B. You're going from science to data science or a data role. And we've talked now about switching, and we've talked a bit about data roles, so obviously also technical skills. But if you really want to move across, there are other questions that you need to answer for yourself. And that's what we're going to look at in the next few slides. So which type of company you want to go to and which industry. Because think of it like this. So, data scientist definitely is the most sexy job of the 21st century, as somebody wrote 10 years ago. But then what has changed is that maybe 10 years ago in the beginnings, you could be a data scientist, and 1 year you would be working on problems, say in manufacturing, for which you were trying to build models, perhaps around predictive maintenance. And maybe the next year or 2 years later, you could do something that was in e-commerce, and maybe revolved around optimizing a recommender system or something like this. But this type of, say, research approach to data science, at least that would be my observation, this is gone. So at the moment, what is the future is you need data competence, but you also need domain expertise. So you actually need to know what your use cases are, where your data is coming from. And in this sense, it matters. So I'm showing you this slide here. So what type of company, but the next one is actually which industry, so where you want to go. I will explain that in a minute. And it matters that you get your head around it, because if you have a good idea where you want to go, this actually, to my mind, really accelerates your transition. So put another way, if I see a CV where somebody says, I want to be a data scientist, nice. But if somebody says, I want to be a data scientist in the health industry and I know I want a job in a startup team, yeah, that's interesting. And one is somebody's articulated their preferences and they know where they think they would be good. So the company, the startup in the health industry can actually notice that you're looking for them. Also, me, for example, as somebody that sometimes get approached, now that you've told me you're looking for a startup in the health industry, I can, at the back of my mind, kind of like, do I know a health startup that is actually actively recruiting? And I can make a connection, right? And three other things. So the more you are clear about this, the easier it becomes to find the right match. Now, Macarena, you have been a consultant. Now you're a data scientist. So what's at a startup, right? So what's
Yes.
the difference between consulting and startup?
Well, I guess for me it was good to start as a consultant because coming from academia, you are not that exposed to business or industry sector. And as a consultant, I had the chance to work in different projects from different industries and see how are different approaches to data and data related problems. I actually consulted for corporate, for example, and I saw also how they work. I would say at least in Germany you would deal with a lot of bureaucracy if you are working on the data team, at least in the corporate world, and maybe face some issues with innovations. But of course, the good side is like nowadays, especially, you have a lot of probably job stability there and can have a career within a big corporate company. The difference in a startup, I actually wanted to switch from consulting to or startup or other type of company because as a consultant, you probably work in different projects and not always you have the chance to follow the project from beginning to end. So you see different aspects of data related problems or products, but not necessarily see the whole development. And in the startup, I was able to follow the product from the beginning and be able to understand the processes and everything that is necessary. And of course, in a startup, you learn many things that are related to data science or data analytics in general. I mean, about infrastructure, because everything is being built and being developed and needs to scale. So you really learn a lot from that, from how data is processed, how different people involved in data management are dealing with data, how to operate. So those are the main differences.
Dina, you also worked for a startup.
Yes, and it was it's maybe an answer also to the question, could you list the most important areas? So of course e-commerce is pretty big because there is like the B2B and the B2C, so from business to business or business to customer businesses. So think, for example, something like Deliveroo, which is business to customer, or something else B2B, like for example the company that I was working for. It's called Hey Jobs, and it does well. You can put it under e-commerce, or you can also put it under advertising. Advertising is another big area, but it did that for companies, so it's B2B. So I would say also advertising in addition to e-commerce and medical. But yeah, I mean there are, like, for example, autonomous driving. So that's another big area where like more advanced data science skills are needed.
Thank you, Dina. So I've pulled up another slide which now says here which industry. Actually, it's really impossible for you to read on the screen. If you're watching in the audience, I totally get it. Even for me, it's impossible to read. There are more slides like this, and if you download the slide set, you can go and use them. And here's how you use them, and that's why actually I'm showing them to you. So if you're asking, what are the most important areas for data science and machine learning jobs? So actually, it matters. It matters how you look at it. What I'm showing you here is a market map of the most important AI startups worldwide. This is a curated list by a company called CB Insights that has been trying to, from thousands of submissions, trying to distill the 100 biggest or most important AI startups on the market now. The way you use this is not actually by trying to figure out all the logos and finding the companies, but by using the categories. So this goes to what Dina was just saying, are they in marketing or are they in automotive? Is this general AI? Is it about manufacturing? Is it the health sector? Is it the finance industry? And you can use market maps like this, and you can Google AI startups, or you can Google just a market map for AI startups in Germany, the Netherlands, United States, Japan, or you can Google, you can search for market maps of data jobs in industry and so on, and you will find information like this, and you can use the categories for the purpose of orientation, so that you can see how you want to approach this. Okay, so some of these things work for you, and this would help you to understand that. Okay, and then one final comment back to Simon here. You should observe the market, and there are markets that are bigger. So I'm just guessing. I might be wrong, but judging from your name, I'm thinking you're in the German-speaking region of Europe. And then there are studies that show that in Germany, particularly popular at the moment, is everything around process automation, manufacturing, and so on and so on. This is where the biggest amount of jobs are actually in West German industry. Yeah, like that. Another hotspot, obviously, is the one that Macarena and Dina really belong to, is the Berlin-based startups. And then if you look at the Berlin-based startups, these are tech startups, and very often they're in the e-commerce space. So think big German names like Zalando or Delivery Hero. You mentioned Deliveroo, which is out of London, or think about Get Your Guides, or larger companies in Berlin that are in this type of space. Macarena, moving on, I have a question directly for you. Mm-hmm. So somebody wants to know, did you travel a lot? And I'm going to add on, do you think this has changed today? So the way consultants work?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I can speak for myself. I think the amount of traveling really depended on the projects I had. That was before the pandemic, of course. And some customers, they really need you to be on site regularly, especially corporate customers, because they have many restrictions and you need to be on site quite frequently, while others they are more open to remote. But honestly, I'm sure this might have changed now after the worst part of the pandemic, let's say. Of course, that stopped in 2020, let's say in 2021, at least the first half of the year while I was still working as a consultant. But I guess that it really depends. Probably if I work for a middle-sized consultant company. Maybe if you work for one of the biggest ones, you travel more often. But I guess that this might have been, the amount of traveling might have been reduced at the moment, even though now it's possible to travel again.
Okay, thank you for that, Macarena. I wanted to move us on. So actually, Dina mentioned earlier, if you're looking for a job, it actually matters what your CV looks like. And by implication, your LinkedIn profile hopefully is aligned with what's on your CV. And it actually matters on that, because this is the first impression a company would have of from you, and they need to make a decision whether to start the interviewing process with you or actually not. Okay, so all of us have been involved with this type of work. We've worked with candidates, we've seen CVs, we've helped people by connecting them to companies or something like this. And there are certain kinds of elements that you actually want on your CV and also your LinkedIn profile that help people to make a positive decision fast. So the first thing you actually really need to do is you need to highlight your technical skills, and think of this really as getting past the no. So we've had this data analyst, data scientist, data engineer, machine learning engineer, what's the role? Does your technical skill profile actually match that role? And then is it convincing? So getting past the no. So, in recruiting, every company wants a lot of applicants. So they have a position. Ideally, they dream of 200 applications, which actually means that 199 times they want to say no because it's just the one job, right? So getting past the no means you need to highlight your technical skills right at the top of your CV, and it needs to be clear that what your profile is and what your experience is. And we're talking entry level, so this isn't a competition for the Nobel Prize or something like this. It's just making sure that your profile is really clear. Dina, you're working as a data science teacher. Your graduates go on to find jobs. Technical skills profile. What do you expect to see there?
As you said, SQL and Python are just must-haves, and I would say a good knowledge of the basic machine learning algorithms. So maybe not deep learning. Of course, for specific jobs, deep learning is the thing that they want. Like, for example, autonomous driving. But if we're talking about like e-commerce, or you're targeting a data analyst job or a business intelligence job, the most important thing would be SQL, would be Python, would be maybe a dashboarding tool. Doesn't matter which one, anyone would do. So a bit of data visualization skills and like basic machine learning knowledge. So, and of course, a GitHub profile that has good level of coding skill shown in a couple of projects.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Dina. So another thing that is actually important is that you demonstrate your business skills, or if you're coming out of academia, you can use the concept of transferable skills. Now you can again use the search engine to find out what transferable skills are. It will tell you. It basically means things that you've done in academia, master, PhD, postdoc, around project management, communication, and so on, that you can pin down and show examples of, and that a company can believe that you can transfer. Yeah. And of course, project management, communication, other such skills are precisely transferable, or business skills. So Macarena, I mean, you did this like 4 years ago. Now you are in business, you've worked as a consultant and as a data scientist. So what would you expect to see there?
In terms of soft skill or transferable skills
Yes.
from academia, well, I think it's important in academia. We'll do a lot of, we do project management, for example. We write reports with data, explaining the results, sometimes to colleague scientists, but sometimes to other committees or even sponsors, private sponsors who sponsor our research, for example. So, and those are skills that are very valuable in industry, for example, that we give presentations on regular basis, probably every week, if you work in a lab environment, for example, like I did. Of course, you write technical reports, you can prepare charts, visualizations, tables, you analyze data, you use statistics, you teach most of the times. So those are skills that you have to show in your CV, but of course not saying I presented in lab meetings or something like that, because nobody knows what a lab meeting is outside academia, right? So try to rewrite that in your CV in a way that someone who is an HR manager at least could understand, someone who's never been in academia. But don't overlook those everyday life tasks that we do in academia, right? Because those are skills that we take with us and are very valuable in our industry career.
Thank you for that, Macarena. So moving on what you see here with the industry-ready CV, it also says lead on the interview by telling your data experience. And I'm going to pick that up on that one in terms of, the portfolio of projects. And then there was this question about the GitHub and other such stuff. So You've heard you need to highlight your technical skills. It also actually matters for company that you show them that you have skills related to business and organization, that you mean it works, you work well inside the company and the company culture. And then now data experience. So yes, your GitHub matters, and your GitHub actually only really matters if you have some good examples on it and some fairly clean code. If your GitHub is all over the place and actually you know that green carpet that shows your contributions and it's only sporadic and your code is not presentable and you don't have documentation, it actually doesn't help you much. So if you use GitHub, use it wisely. And then I have a general comment on which Macarena and Dina can agree or disagree in a minute. If you are a PhD or a master student or a postdoc and you have worked with data in academia, I think the value of real data, even if it's real academic data, and having worked with that, is much higher than that of any capstone project that you did with an online learning provider, for example. Okay, so I'm trying to say, if you really have data experience, find a way of showing and highlighting your data experience. Examples coming later, and make sure you really get this across, because working with data in engineering, agriculture, medicine, radio astronomy, social sciences, even survey data, and so on, is more valuable than a capstone project, because with the real data and the real work comes also all the experience with, is the data usable? Is it actually clean? Do I now have to do something about it? How many stakeholders do I need to go to understand if I have all the data that is relevant, who's waiting for which results, and do they make sense, and so on. So you get the whole thing. So this real world, real life experience really does make a difference. So number one. And then my comment number two is going back to the GitHub or the portfolio. If you're doing that, we mentioned earlier that where this is going is data by domain. So data in health or manufacturing or whatever. If you have a portfolio of projects that is all over the place, and you did a little Twitter sentiment analysis on the one side, and then you were doing some object detection on the other side, and then you even did a third unrelated project, I don't think this helps you any longer. So if you're building a portfolio, make a decision where you want to go and make sure they're all in the same domain. So 3 health-related portfolio projects make a difference if that's where you want to go, but otherwise, I'm skeptical. Dina.
Yes, I kind of agree. I think if you put your GitHub profile in your CV, it's going to get checked out. However, I don't see, I know that hiring managers don't spend a lot of time checking it out, right? Yeah. So you want to grab their attention in 30 seconds, 1 minute, and that means choosing where you want to go. So you're applying, for example, for an e-commerce job, you have kind of a basket analysis or a nice kind of EDA and visualization of some e-commerce related data. I think that gets the info across quickly, and it shows that you can code on a professional level. But if it's all over the place, I too don't feel that there is value there.
Thank you for that. I want to come to the final point. Focus your search with a professional mission. So we have actually already implicitly been talking about that all the time, right? It's this telling the other side that you want to be a data analyst in health in a startup, or that you want to be a data scientist for manufacturing in the manufacturing industry or in the automotive industry. Yeah, so to get specific about your profile and where you want to go. I have a comment about this, and going back to Macarena to perhaps comment on this. So I think we all totally understand that when you come out of academia, you sometimes actually don't yet really know, or it's uncertain or unclear, and you need some time. Why we're doing this, and also why you find more market maps on the slides to help you get some orientation. But Macarena, how useful was it for you to move first into a consulting job to be able to kind of explore the profile and then also look at industries that you were consulting for?
For me, it was actually very useful because coming from academia, I really didn't know much about the industry world. Of course, I did my research, but another thing is to see it firsthand, right? And also see, for example, how corporate works, how projects are managed. So that was important for me because I also think data science, in my case, also for data analytics probably and engineer as well, is not it's about, of course, your algorithms or your mathematics or your visualizations or whatever you want, but you also have to understand the context, the product, what you are dealing with. So you are analyzing those numbers in a very specific context, and that's that's the business case, and you need to be familiar with that. And of course, you expose in consultancy to different industries and types of projects, and then you can decide. For me, it was actually very, very useful.
Thank you for that. We've had a question come in about German now because somebody's watching from Germany. Miguel, hello. But it's also local language. Dina, how do you feel about this in 2022? English and local languages and data jobs?
I feel that you can look at things like look at the job market like a pie, right? So if you have English and you're living in Berlin, I cannot tell you like percentages of the pie, but you have a certain slice, right? So startups usually want people who speak in English because they have a very diverse people working there, and that's the common language. But if you are moving to kind of bigger companies, let's say Deutsche Bahn, BVG, Chibo, some of the bigger German names, they are now hiring data, but they require you to know to speak both German and English. Because maybe in the development team, people are going to speak every day with each other because of the diversity in English, but the company, official company language is German. So there is a value in knowing how to speak German. However, if you're starting out and you just moved in, it makes sense to go ahead. I did that. I prioritized finding a job and working, and I worked as a data scientist in a startup where German was not required at all. And I learned German as I went, so that when I want, I can open myself or have like a wider set of opportunities when I want to move and change jobs. So that's my take on it.
Thank you for that. I have a follow-up question that was so long that it's not all displayed here. So the question from Amr goes in the direction that, like, you are coming from an academic background, and the question is, how good, if you do a GitHub, how good does it need to be, and does it need to be comparable to a CS graduate?
No, it doesn't have to be. There is a lot of value for people who have post degrees in mathematics and anything that is really heavy on the statistics, probability, and programming side. So you're right about that. The person who posted the question. However, you still have to demonstrate, and companies test you for that when they give you a task. That's kind of like the second filter after the CV. So you have to pass that, and you have to demonstrate also in your GitHub that you can code for that industry. So for e-commerce, again, probably you're not gonna use deep learning models, but you should be able to do a proper exploratory data analysis, proper visualizations that look professional, maybe a simple linear or logistic regression. So I find that there is value in demonstrating that as well.
Thank you. We have lots more questions coming in. That's great, actually. Keep them coming. If I miss a question, please complain and tell us, repost the question or tell us to go and look at it. Macarena, this next question is for you, consulting jobs and as data science position. And I'm going to move us forward in the presentation. Actually, I'm going to skip a couple of sections that we typically do, and I'm going to skip them because you can get the slide set and look at them for yourself. I'm going to move us to the practical part with the CVs and show people that. While Macarena, consulting jobs, data scientist position, pay. How do you see that today?
No, I see. Yes, of course they do. They pay. I mean, because in a way, when you work as a consultant, you have a data science role, and then you are paid. It depends on the company, but usually you are paid I mean, the average of marketing, maybe more, maybe a little bit less, but that wouldn't depend on whether the company is a consulting company or not.
Okay. Follow up. How long does a transition typically take?
I think it depends on your background. I guess that maybe I guess, for example, if you did a PhD in computer vision in a very specific field, you can apply for a job that requires that, and your transition would be immediate, I would say.
Okay.
While in other cases, you would probably need longer time. And I think nowadays it might also depend on the market, on the economical situation, on the field you want to focus on. Because for some industry areas, they are probably planning for a recession and they are not hiring that much.
Okay.
It really depends.
I have yet another question coming in that goes into perhaps, I don't know if you can answer it at all, Macarena. Training on data science in ecology and biodiversity. Do you know anything about this?
No, I don't. But I think if you are interested in that, you can search for data sets or data problems you could solve. First of all, think about what are the problems that could be solved using data science tool, whatever that means.
Yes.
I guess that's probably prediction models in ecology and biodiversity. I'm sure there are many papers about that. But if you want to transition into industry, you should think what type of companies would expect that. If that's it sounds to me more like a research project for academia than transition into industry. I don't think that NGOs or other, I mean, official or state government, I don't know, offices are really into that at the moment. Hopefully in the future they will, but I don't think right now.
Okay,
So
thank you.
I actually
Yes.
know something.
Okay.
So I will just check the name. So it's kind of like a competition that is it's open worldwide, and I will look up for the name and I'll send it to you, Chris, to send it in the chat. And
Okay.
it's in Portugal. So it originated from Portugal, and the actual data set that is given to the competitors in the different stages come from the municipality of different cities in Portugal, and they're asking them to help them, especially with like green initiatives. So reducing the use of some kind of resource or offering better municipal services. So I'm going to send you the name of that, and it's open to participants now all over the world, and it's held once a year.
Okay, understood. Thank you. So a rejoinder, I have that also on that, and also for everybody. Google, the search engine. There is actually a special search engine provided by Google just for data sets. You can use Google to go and find the Google search engine for data sets, and it will work. So this is how this should work. Okay. There are more questions coming in that we're going to address. So I've moved forward in the presentation, as you can see here. So we're going to address questions, and in the interim also show you, because we're talking about CV and what does it actually need to look like. So just as a recap for you, so we talked about the industry-ready CV, and what we wanted to show you is examples of CVs that address these points. And the first one that you're looking here actually is technical skills. And then you can have a look, and I will also explain this, and then we'll go back to more questions, so to speak, that I've picked up here. Also the domain change question. So what you see here in terms of a technical skills profile, actually that you see it focuses, so to speak, shows the Python and other programming languages and the SQL, and then Python in some detail, and then it has this ETL pipelines, data processing, and DevOps. Okay, so it's a relatively clear profile that goes in the direction of data engineering, yeah, and data ops, if you so like, and just shows things that I've done there. So a company that is looking for that type of person, also very attractive actually at the moment on the market. This technical skills section speaks to that. And you will probably or hopefully see that it is very different from the next one, which focuses on data analytics and statistics and modeling and visualization, yeah, which is another way and another useful way of looking at this stuff. So while you're looking at that, we're going to pick up on a few more questions. So this difference, how long does it take, the domain change and the value of things. So I'll start and then pass back to Macarena and Dina. So how much is the difference in the value in industry between a postgraduate and a PhD? Actually, often zero. I know this is not such a great answer to give, but here goes. So something that we know and for which is data, and you can go and check yourself, is the OECD has been collecting data about the education sector. And for the past 30 years, it's roughly being true that a PhD compared to a master typically does not add to your lifetime income value. Yeah, so it doesn't overall. Also because while you were doing the PhD and the postdoc, actually your income is unfortunately low typically. Therefore, what you make up later by perhaps earning more, you lost in the 5 years that you were still in academia. So overall, actually, no. Then in our particular field, it is sometimes the case that the big players, the Googles and the Amazons and what have you, for some roles actually require you to have a PhD. Sometimes it is really narrowly a PhD in machine learning. Very often it is more broadly a PhD, and then it's about computational PhDs or highly numerate PhDs, often in STEM disciplines. So that also. But my next comment on this is the one thing that's I've really noticed in the past years is that, I don't know how to put this except really bluntly, every German higher education institution in every German village now has a master's program for data, some sort or another. I mean, there are literally like dozens of them, yeah? So this changes the market because there is so much opportunity now to people to get some qualifications, also to get university qualifications, and it changes things. So it actually depends. So the market for talent is getting a bit tighter, if you so like. So the thing is, there isn't a set or preset way in which companies respond to this. You need to make your case. And if you come as a PhD, the point is that you typically have a high level of domain expertise and a really higher level of numeracy because you've been doing this so much longer. And then you need to figure out how to make this work for you. Dina, how do you see that one? This question here.
Yeah, it's a tough question.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to put it in numbers, right? I feel if you have a PhD, it's like you said, a master's in data would be something also as interesting and as valuable. So I think it opens still a few doors, especially if your PhD made you have like experience in programming. And also working on optimization problems, because that's kind of like also related to data and machine learning. But I don't feel that the salaries are affected. Like if we talk like average wise, that the salaries are affected by having a PhD. I think masters is kind of important, especially that we are here in Germany and people usually, after finishing their bachelor, take a master that is 1 year.
So I have a question here for you. How can I have experience after getting proper training and had a BA, but in computer engineering?
So I think computer engineering, that your chances are great because you will pick up software engineering skills really quickly, I expect. But you can do something like the thing that Chris posted for me. So the competition I was talking about is called World Data League, and the data sets there, and you can access the data sets from last year and also look at the results because everything is open source of the teams that were competing. These are real data sets gathered by the government in Portugal. And this is not the only outlet for this kind of work. So you will find data science for good, for example, is another resource. So there are so many competitions and hackathons and opportunities like this to practice on real data. And maybe that would be the thing that you put on your GitHub. So that would definitely be an interesting thing to add also to your CV and to start a conversation with recruiters.
Okay, thank you for that. So actually, Macarena, to you, a question that we had earlier, I wanted to go back to at this point about switching domains or moving from one domain to another. So, I mean, you were working at a Max Planck Institute for Infection Biology, but you're not doing health or pharma or anything at the moment. So you've changed domains. So you have some experience in this, and then also, how do you see this today? So, I mean, leaving academia actually is, I guess, a chance to switch domains if that's what you want to do, right? You don't have to stay in it, you can. But how often can you actually do this? Can you do this once or twice in your life?
That's a good question. I started my data career as a consultant, so I didn't have a specific domain at that point. While I was still a consultant, right? Because I was exposed to many different things. But since I then switched to a more, let's say, a non-consultant type of data science job, I realized that it's a plus if you really search for a domain, and the domain that is not necessarily, could be a specific industry, of course, but can also be something like and it's actually what I'm doing is like, for example, like product data scientist, or related to how you analyze the data related to a very specific product in terms of customer behavior, because there are specific metrics for that. And how you handle that. So potentially you could do that for different types of industries, right? As long as you have customers, let's say, even if they are, if it's B2B or B2C, there will be some difference. But in the end, it's a matter of how you approach those metrics and the data that's coming in. But that's another domain, I would say, for example. So I would say, yes, you may switch to another domain, but you have to try to do it wisely. And because now, like you mentioned, Chris, the market is like narrowing down, right? The expertise is not that valuable that you have expertise in many different domains.
Cool, thank you for that. So I wanted to address here the 8 years of postdoctoral experience in mathematics. So the answer is actually yes. There is such a large influx of talent that spending 8 extra years in academia, I think, makes it harder at the moment to cross over than it was like 5 years ago. So that's true. And then I also want to say, but it's not impossible. And actually, it depends so much more than on your strategy. For example, if you have 8 years of postdoctoral experience in mathematics, my question back to you would be, have you looked at insurance company, and even more specifically at reinsurance companies that have need that really have a high need for people with really advanced mathematics, given what they're doing, what their business model are, and what they need to calculate in the background, and where they want to go with their business in using data analytics and machine learning. So the question here is, if you 8 years postdoc experience in mathematics, and Dina says also fintech, thank you for that, exactly. So fintech, insurance companies. So there are companies that need this, and PhD plus 8 means with PhD perhaps 4 years, you have done 12 years of really advanced mathematics. Now, the question is, of course, how much is that mathematics away from what is needed for machine learning or data analytics? I don't know. We'd have to discuss in detail, but there are. So what I'm trying to say in summary is if you're in that situation, you need to get even more specific about where you want to go and figure out where it is that your skills and your value is appreciated the most and go there. Yeah, this is how you make your transition possible and also smooth. Yeah, so that you find that out. Okay, I want to move us a little on so that people can look at other. We spoke earlier about this notion of transferable skills. And while we keep answering your questions, we're going to show you 2 examples of that so you get an idea. So just for you to look at, you can see here an example where we have hardware design and programming, organization and communication, coaching and leadership. Okay, so this is one way of looking at transferable skills. And then if you look at it, you see that there are bullet points added here that are really, really specific. So the point is that if you say you have organization and communication skills, so, prove it, okay? And the coordination of greater 10 engineers across 5 facilities for using accelerator experiments, so you can probably guess this is high energy physics, actually makes a difference. It shows that you've done remotely to do something together and so on. So it proves this. And that is how you go. I'm going to show you another one and then actually go back to our messages and try and find some new questions. I have this one. Are there any university online courses? Yes, I think the answer to that is you go to Coursera. So, Macarena, Dina?
Yes, you can have specific courses, but if you have working experience, I think you don't need that. That's
Yes.
at least my experience. I don't know why. I don't see that a master or PhD adds value. That's not what I see in my experience. I mean, compared to someone who has already experienced and worked professionally and applied in business settings and could deploy ML models, compared to someone coming from academia, unless that person has a specific PhD in ML or a specific field of ML that a specific company wants to make use of. That's
Yes.
my experience. I don't see why this should be. I wouldn't invest time on that, to be honest.
Okay, thank you for that. I have another question. So Dina, we have somebody here that is going not to the Spice Academy in Berlin, but I think to data science retreat. This is what this is supposed to be. But I wanted to ask you that you can answer the question, what exactly can I expect after such a data science bootcamp? So you are a senior teacher at the largest bootcamp at the moment, I think. So what can your graduates expect?
Well, I feel that the benefit of joining a bootcamp is kind of like having this community and having this structure for your journey. Maybe not the absolute beginning. So if you already know a bit of Python and maybe a little bit of SQL or not, but you definitely know how to program in some language, then I think a bootcamp can help you, especially if you're someone who, has a little bit of a problem of not being overwhelmed by a lot of things and a lot of resources that are out there. Then what you should expect from the bootcamp is to have a structure that takes you through the basic building blocks of having of being ready for your first industry job as a data professional. So you're talking about Python, machine learning, SQL, databases in general, also maybe a little bit of other things related to machine learning, maybe a little bit of front-end development, kind of like the final step. But most importantly, would have a profile, like a GitHub profile of projects from start to end that can be something that you should be something good enough to use for landing jobs. The second thing that can be expected is to have support with looking for the job. I mean, I don't know about data science retreat, but I know that we do that here. So
Okay.
you would have someone taking you through how to set up your CV and how to approach tests that you're going to be receiving from companies, and so on and so forth. So these are like kind of like the two main things. Plus, of course, access to the community.
Cool. Thank you for that. Okay, so we're now looking, we're still on the CV topic. So we spoke earlier about the fact with your data experience. So here again, you have examples. I'm showing you, or we've selected this example around data experience because this is actually a social scientist. So it says here, 100+ research designs based on statistical inference and data analytics. I know what type of questions can be answered with which data. Yeah. And then I've utilized large-scale survey data at the national level, 3 countries, covering individual behavior and opinions towards political parties and regimes, and then about additional data. So the what I want to get across is data experience actually matters, and real data, even if academic data, is actually valuable because it means you've handled this type of work before and you know how to work. And it also, if you think forward, is a way of telling a company that you would like to talk to that you've done this before, that you also know how to communicate about it, that you can perhaps also convey the meaning of stuff that you've done to other people who are not data people by being able to kind of, briefly summarize what was important about it. And also, if you do get called up for interview and you've made an effort to kind of, show your experience a little bit, it is something that the interviewers can pick up on that actually works well for you. So think of it like this. Always when we get to know other people, we're obviously looking for conversation topics. We're looking for ways to connect. We're looking for asking people questions that expand on their experience or expertise. And by writing this down and giving it to them, you're giving them a chance to kind of say, oh, interesting, you did this data project. And in this case here, again, it was something in the physics. So 60 million data points per hour. What does that actually mean, 60 million data points per hour, right? And this is a super, super question for you as a candidate because you know the answer, because this is your home turf. You can start talking about something that is also close to your heart, yeah? So making an effort on your CV, not just to convey roughly your skills, but actually taking one particular point important in your experience and dwelling on it a little bit and telling people what it is about, I think can go a long way to help you make the connection. Yes, please.
I really like that it says model the universe. I think it's a great way to start. A sentence in a CV and that person probably will get a job. If you model the universe, then everything else should be easy, right?
Yes, perhaps. It's so also, I think, those that are in academia, science communication, science night, right? So if you want to get the attention of your audience, you actually need to say something or write something that makes them want to read the next sentence or hear the next sentence. So of course, model the universe perhaps it's a wonderful exaggeration, right? A wonderful exaggeration designed to get attention. The more critical mind might think, model the universe, are you nuts? But there you go. Yes, thank you. Okay, so on my chat here at the moment, we don't have more questions. I'm going to move us on a little bit. We have more material, but back to our audience. So I can see that some of you are still watching us. If you have more questions, this is the moment to ask them. So I'm through with that. I now want to go and show you 2 examples of the search and mission statement. So we've been talking a lot about this. If you want to make the transition today, you need to get more focused. This is how you show that you are focused and also how you evaluate for yourself whether you have that focus in like 5 lines, right? I'm a data analyst with a background in environmental engineering, actively looking for a new role in Berlin, Amsterdam, or another metropolis. I am well versed in utilizing services and packages, for example, AWS, Microsoft, or Tableau, and I can build from scratch in Python. Okay, it's relatively clear what you're offering for, and it's also, you said you want to be in Berlin or Amsterdam or some such international diverse large city. And working with data gives me flow, so I prefer a dynamic startup or a company in an increasingly data-driven industry. Also, clear. If that's what your company is, that person is actually looking for you. So you're beginning to have a match here that is interesting. And then I have another one here for you. I'm a data scientist with a PhD focused on regularization theory, hard word, and optimization. I have 4+ years of experience in data processing and modeling. I'm looking for a new challenge in Barcelona, Madrid, or Lisbon. So, also specific. From October 2021, so that was a while ago, person got a job, preferably in a leading business team, mitigating climate change and reducing the carbon footprint. Okay, so this is somebody who also actually clearly has a mission. There's something that they want to do in life or contribute to do this. I have a wonderful question for both Macarena and Dina. I have a strong opinion on this, but let's say what you say. So Dina, perhaps you start. Internships, what do you think about those? Is this a viable way to gain industry experience? And actually, Simon or Simon, could you tell us, do you have a master's or a PhD, or where are you?
I mean, definitely, if you have a PhD or master's, no. You are too, you are better off doing something like the World Data League, or doing even something like science to data science. I will also send a link to that, just kind of like a different style of, not a boot camp, but kind of like an experience where you get to work as a consultant.
Okay, so this gets even better. Simon tells us that he has a PhD and 4 years of experience.
Definitely not.
Okay.
Definitely not. You're better off doing your own, like doing some projects, or data science for good, or World Data League competition, or hackathon, or something like this, because then you would actually usually internships are for graduates or even students, especially if we're talking about Germany.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm going to pick up on this question, what you put in a cover letter, without repeating what is already in your CV. So the reason why practice has shown that these search and mission statements work is because they actually replace the cover letter. This is the main point. So think about it like this. Sometimes companies still invite you to apply to the black hole. The black hole is when you send your CV and you write a cover letter to the black hole, a mail address of human HR, and then you wait for an answer. Sometimes it comes, sometimes it's a black hole and you never really get a response. Or you just get one, we're sorry, we're not interested. Okay, yes, this is a way of going about your job search, but actually it's not the best way of going about your job search. So we all have LinkedIn or other social media profile. We all have networks. We all have friends. Many of us have people working in data. Okay, if you want that to work, then you need this statement and not the cover letter. And it needs to be on your CV. Here's why. So think about it. Say you're working on this and you know me and you say, Chris, I'm actually looking for a job in this type of Berlin startup. Do you know anybody? If you give me your CV or your LinkedIn profile and all the information that is necessary is there in one go, I can actually pass it on to somebody. And because it's all there in one document or one LinkedIn profile, somebody can quickly get it. Yeah, you're not asking them to click here and click there and find something over there. It all needs to be in one place, digestible within 20 seconds. And in those 20 seconds, somebody needs to say, okay, I want to keep looking at this. Yeah, everybody's busy. So use it to your advantage. Really make sure CV and LinkedIn, both of them are valuable. They need to have all the information, and it needs to be so that somebody can find out exactly what you want and what you can do without talking to you first. It really needs to be, at a glance, super clear. Do you agree, or any of you disagree?
I agree. I don't see now many job posts where they actually ask for a cover letter any longer, I would say. And I would say in the most dynamic companies, or they wouldn't ask for that. in my experience at least. There might be some that they still do, but I guess if you're, I mean, maybe for an entry level job could be, but if you are already experienced and actually in the application process, you already face, like, you have to send cover letters. Sometimes you need to, your CV is not enough and you have to fill in whatever type of form. People would give up and don't go there. I mean, in my experience, at least that's what I heard from many colleagues and from my own experience.
Yes. Are companies in particular looking for women?
No, but some of them, they say, well, some I guess they might have policies where they want to encourage women to apply, and in some companies this might be an advantage, but I don't think that they're looking for women.
Yes, Dina. So Dina mentioned, so to speak, diversity awareness in companies. So let's address this. How do you see it?
Well, it's just as I said, it's an awareness. And for some companies, to be honest, it's just more like appearing to be diverse than it's actual diversity, meaning that, some companies would just put out there that they have, half of our data science team is women, for example. Well, they didn't set out to hire women. It just happened that happened, but they will use it to advertise for themselves. So just be aware, and you wouldn't want to join a company because they're trying to hire for a quota, right? It's not, like Macarena said, it's not a nice thing or a nice situation to be in. But I feel that, there is definitely just more awareness out there. Just don't depend on it to help you in your job search. That's the punchline, I guess.
No, and actually, I normally, when I interviewed for companies, I ask how many women are in the team, or not only the data team, but with how many women I expect to interact with other teams and so on, to have an idea of the type of environment I'm going to face, and the kind of answer that they give back to me.
Yeah.
It's very informative.
Indeed, and so I can add something to that. So it relates actually to the slide that we're still looking at and the opportunity. So you're a woman and you're in data and you're looking for a first job. Actually, I think something that I've observed, and then Macarena and Dina can disagree with me, you do not actually want to end up on a team where you're the only woman. So there's a problem with a lack of diversity and the discrimination and or just simply not so great atmosphere that results from this if it's just the boys. So you can turn this around, you see. So the question again to you is, what type of companies are you interested in? And then we have LinkedIn, a wonderful tool for checking out companies and who works there. And then again, you can, for those companies, go and find out who works there in terms of the data people. And now that you found the data people, you can check for yourself, do they have women? And if they do, so if you had a future female colleague, might be an idea to get in touch and actually to use that and to use that to network. And again, if your LinkedIn profile or your CV is really that complete, that it's clear, then that person may actually spend the 20 or 30 seconds looking at it and, but don't know, maybe able to help you. So you could kind of turn the tables on this and say, you've got the talent, you've got the skills, you know what you're looking for. Go and find a company where you know that you'll be welcome, or at least minimum requirement, you will have 1, 2, 3 female colleagues around you, so that there are people that you can turn to if there are issues. So what do you make of that?
I would add that there are two aspects. One is the one you mentioned, and I totally agree. It's better not to be the only woman in the team. But there is another aspect, but that's not necessarily bad. It happened to me. I was in one situation like the only woman, and I with my other data scientist colleagues, it was really, I had absolutely no problem. It was actually a very good experience, but I understand that might not be the norm. But in that case, for me, the problem was a little bit more how to communicate with the C-level, because they were not used to communicate with women in a technical role.
Okay.
They didn't know how to communicate with me. That was the problem I faced back then. So you
Understood.
also want to find out not only what happens in your team, but what are the policies, how, also try to find out what is going on in the C-level as well in terms of gender diversity. And I must say, of course, gender diversity is one aspect, but there are also other aspects of diversity that might also be relevant for you to find out how's the situation in the company.
Thank you, Macarena. I'm looking at the clock and I realize it's 14:25. It's a really, really hot day. So I'm going to try and actually kind of wrap this up for today, if you allow me. So the first thing that I want to do is actually point out, so we had somebody who's going to data science retreat in Berlin. We had Dina, who is the senior data science teacher for the Spice Academy, which is also happens to be in Berlin. This is also where the three of us met. I wanted to point out that if you're interested, actually, the AI Guild has found an industry partner in finance, so in fintech and insurance, where we're able to offer 15 entry-level data roles, starting with training in the autumn and a new job in January. So if you're interested to find that, you can find this through datacareer.eu, the academy. And then move us forward, kind of, so to speak, forward. So just picking up again on this question of male and female and fintech to be more male dominated. So yes and no. It really actually depends on the company. So there is generally kind of like this, there's data that shows that it's still an 80-20 split. But then if a company starts having not just men, but also women, then typically also often there are 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is how you need to go about it. It's not by industry. It's actually, you need to be specific. It's by company and by team. That's how you look at this. Okay, but to wrap it up. So we were here, so to speak, at, sort of outlook and wrapping it up. So I'm going to quickly go through a set of slides for you that by looking at the slides that you can use this in terms of orientation. So a really hard part typically is actually choose your industry, where you want to go to. So here is a chart that kind of shows you in which industries investments into data and machine learning are higher and they're paying off better. Yeah. So unsurprisingly, finance or IT or media are doing better than the health sector at the moment, where there's also a lot of investment, but the return isn't so high. And if you think about the government or the public sector, actually both investment and returns are low. So there's just not much happening there. Then I've already shown you the market maps. And so there's you have for 2022 and you have for 2021, and the categories change a little bit and you can use that. Or you can find a map actually particularly for fintech. Yeah. So this is a fintech market map. And the point is that you need to look at these categories. So once you look at the categories, you understand where the use cases are in the industry. And this is not just true for the startups, but it's also true for all the other companies in the space. So this is how to think about this. It's where the use cases are. That's where your opportunities are. Then another one here is we have AI startups in Germany, so you can look at that. Or we have specific to AI infrastructure, so companies that work on making that work. And then here is even an overview where you can see Germany, Sweden, Netherlands, Norway, France, and so on. So there are a lot of resources out there that you can access in like 5 minutes. Of course, you then need to spend like 2 to 3 hours going through them and understanding them. But what I want to say is, if you're looking for orientation about where to go, industry and opportunities, it is desk research that you can actually do in a weekend and then spend the next weekend checking up on your findings. And then to some extent, you'll probably be done, because you can kind of keep a list of things that are interesting and this list of things that you can exclude quickly. And that way you kind of narrow it down and you get some ideas about where you want to go. And that really moves you forward. With which we kind of come to the wrap up of this at 14:29, just about on time. So data science, or data, is the sexiest job of the 21st century. That was the last 10 years. And I personally think that the next 10 years are going to be more interesting. So the last 10 years has been very much about trial and error, experiments, proof of concepts, getting things done. Often people have been very much flashed by algorithms or by the idea of having a general artificial intelligence. And actually, this guy I showed you at the beginning, Jean-François Gagné, this French-Canadian entrepreneur, he founded a startup that got a lot of money. It was the highest funded AI startup at seed level ever, based on the idea that kind of algorithms would be the way to go forward, only to find out that, oops, we don't have enough data for all our fancy algorithms, and we need to go back and doing that. And even Andrew Ng, one of the really prolific people around AI and also teaching AI and talking about it, has now coined the term data-centric AI. So what I want to leave you with today is, it is not the fancy deep neural network that will get you hired or that's at the beginning of your career. What companies really need over the next 10 years to make things work and also to scale their use cases is what's at the bottom of this pyramid, okay? It's collecting the data, it's moving and storing the data, it's exploring and transforming the data, it's aggregating and label the data. And then they learn and optimize and they do the AI, so to speak, on top of that. But a lot of companies, including startups, by the way, so Google maybe is already really doing well with this pyramid, and so is Microsoft and so on. But for everybody else, there is a lot of struggle still going on the lower levels of the pyramid. And that's a good thing, because at the end of the day, to become an expert in this field, you actually need to know your data. With which I pass on to Macarena for last words.
Yes, Chris, I totally agree with you that the next 10 years are going to be very interesting, and the field is the field of data is really changing at the moment, and because everywhere now we can see, I think especially after the pandemic, or that how important data is, and how important it is to get the right data in place. So not only the kind of analysis or cleaning that you do with the data, but where is this data coming from? And there are also a lot of privacy issues, and this is going to be a topic in the next years for sure. So there are opportunities, there will be more opportunities. So I think if you are thinking about transitioning to a data career, this is the time to do it. So as a final word, just want to say, if you want to connect in LinkedIn, please mention that you've been in this workshop.
Dina.
I would also add to what Macarena said, is to really think about where, again, we mentioned this as we went, really target the jobs that you have like a lower barrier to cross. So if that means that maybe your target is to be a data scientist or a machine learning engineer, but right now that's a huge gap to cover because you don't have, Python, for example. So what I would do is that I would move to a stepping stone position to get into data, and then moving from that to your desired position is something that is going to be easier because the gap is smaller. Again, that is not applicable, of course, on all cases, but this is something that I've seen worked for graduates of the bootcamp that I'm currently working in. And yes, please connect on LinkedIn if you would like, and leave a message that we have met in this webinar.
Thank you, Dina. Thank you, Macarena. Thank you to everybody that's been watching us. Friday afternoon, 2:30 Berlin time. Time to do something else. Enjoy your Friday, enjoy your weekend. Thank you for being here. Macarena, Dina, thank you for joining me. Perhaps see you next time. And if you liked it, tell a friend about it. We're doing this again.
Thanks everyone for listening. Thanks,
Thank
Chris
you.
and Macarena.
Thank you, Dina. Thank you, Chris.